Russia has today warned it will shoot down any U.S. missiles fired at Syria as the European Air Traffic Control Agency looked to clear eastern Mediterranean airspace ahead of a possible strike in the next 72 hours. The U.S. has maintained the threat of rocket attacks in response to Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's horrifying chemical attack on the rebel-held town of Douma on Saturday. Amid rising tensions today, Moscow's UN envoy Vasily Nebenzia pleaded with the U.S. not to take action and warned Washington it will bear responsibility for any illegal military adventure it carries out. Moscow's ambassador to Lebanon, Alexander Zasypkin, told Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV that any U.S. missiles fired at Syria would be shot down and the launch sites targeted, Reuters reports. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov urged restraint this morning, saying countries should avoid taking action that could further destabilize the war-torn country. But Britain, France and the U.S. are continuing to discuss possible military action to punish Assad for the atrocity, with speculation mounting today about what action will be taken. The U.S. military appeared to be in position to carry out any attack order this morning with a Navy destroyer armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles underway in the eastern Mediterranean. This morning, the Pan-European Air Traffic Control Agency Eurocontrol warned aircraft to be careful when flying close to Syria. It said that air-to-ground and/or cruise missiles could be used within the next 3 days, and there was a possibility of intermittent disruption of radio navigation equipment due to the possible launch of airstrikes into Syria with air-to-ground and/or cruise missiles within the next 72 hours, and the possibility of intermittent disruption of radio navigation equipment. Due consideration needs to be taken when planning flight operations in the eastern Mediterranean Nicosia area, it said, referring to the designated airspace. Aviation regulators in countries including the US, UK, France, and Germany have previously issued warnings against airlines entering Syrian airspace, leading most carriers to avoid the area. The only commercial flights above Syria, as of 1:15 a.m. GMT on Wednesday, were being flown by Syrian Air and Lebanon's Middle East Airlines, according to flight tracking website FLIGHTRADAR24. The Eurocontrolled statement included a broader area outside the airspace controlled by Damascus. The Nicosia Flight Information Region, named in the Eurocontrolled statement on Tuesday, covers the island of Cyprus and surrounding waters, according to a map on the agency's website. The same map did not designate any specific territory as being the eastern Mediterranean region. Meanwhile, the U.S. military appeared to be in position to carry out any attack order this morning with a Navy destroyer, the USS Donald Cook, getting underway in the eastern Mediterranean on Monday after completing a port call in Cyprus. The guided missile destroyer is armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, the weapon of choice in a U.S. attack 1 year ago on an airfield in Syria following an alleged sarin gas attack on civilians. Also, the Navy said the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier and its strike group will depart Norfolk, Virginia, on Wednesday for a regularly scheduled deployment to Europe. The strike group will be accompanied by a German frigate FGS Hessen, a state-of-the-art vessel specializing in air defense, which officials say is the only type of warship in the Western world with 3 kinds of surface-to-air missiles. Its radar has a detection range of more than 200 nautical miles for air targets. In the face of intense world outrage, the United Nations Security Council failed to agree a global response to the chemical attack on Tuesday, after Washington and Moscow opposed each other's rival motions to set up an international investigation into poison gas use in the 7-year-old conflict. U.S. President Donald Trump has made it clear he plans to make the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad, and perhaps his Russian and Iranian backers, pay for the latest alleged toxic gas atrocity in the war-racked country. But Russia has warned against action, and this morning Defense Committee lawmaker Andrei Krasov said the Kremlin would treat a U.S. airstrike on Syria not just as an act of aggression, but a war crime of the Western coalition. According to rescue workers, on Saturday more than 40 people died in the rebel-held Damascus suburb of Douma in an alleged chemical attack, which left victims struggling to breathe, foaming at the mouth, and with discolored skin. The World Health Organization today condemned the suspected chemical weapons attack, in which it said an estimated 500 patients went to health facilities with signs and symptoms consistent with exposure to toxic chemicals. Who demands immediate unhindered access to the area to provide care to those affected, to assess the health impacts, and to deliver a comprehensive public health response. Peter Salama, who Deputy Director General for Emergency Preparedness and Response, said in a statement issued in Geneva. UN aid agencies do not have access to most of the enclave of eastern Ghouta, including Douma, where the alleged attack occurred. The Syrian government has denied responsibility. But the United States, Britain and France have argued the incident bears all the hallmarks of a strike ordered by the regime of Russia's ally Assad, which has been blamed for previous attacks by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW. Trump has warned there would be a big price to pay, and Washington's UN ambassador Nikki Haley made it clear that the failure to secure a Security Council vote would not hold America and its allies back. How Russia could use fearsome S-400 defense system to shoot down missiles aimed at Syria. A Russian ambassador has warned that Russia would shoot down incoming missiles and attack their launching platforms in the event of a strike on Syria. A similar warning has been issued in the past by the Chief of Staff of Russia's armed forces. The Syrian air defense system is understood to have been heavily damaged, but Russia has a formidable S-400 system, which has been in place in Syria for more than a year. This poses a lethal threat to modern jets. Sources said it is likely any attack by the US, Britain, and France would be carried out from a safe enough distance to avoid planes being shot down. The most advanced of Russia's terrifying S-400 systems is designed to destroy aircraft, cruise and ballistic missiles, including medium-range missiles, and can also be used against ground objectives, according to Russian media. The most advanced of Russia's terrifying S-400 systems is designed to destroy aircraft, cruise and ballistic missiles, including medium-range missiles, and can also be used against ground objectives, according to Russian media. In 2015, pictures emerged of the state-of-the-art missile system's arrival to the battlefields of Syria. The Syrian air defense system is understood to have been heavily damaged, but Russia has a formidable S-400 system, pictured, which has been in place in Syria for more than a year. It can engage targets at a distance of 400 kilometers and at an altitude of up to 30 kilometers. In January, it was reported that contracts for S-400 deliveries were inked with China and Turkey, and that negotiations were also underway to sell the system to Saudi Arabia. Dmitry Trenin, the head of the Carnegie Moscow Center and a former Soviet military officer, raised the terrifying prospect of a military clash between world superpowers. He said, "The US and Russia are now closer to a direct collision between their military forces than at any time since the Cold War. The only question on my mind, will Russia hit back at the US when it launches strikes against Damascus?" In recent weeks, the Russian military has reportedly began jamming some smaller US military drones operating in the skies over Syria. According to 4 US officials speaking to NBC News, this has affected American military operations. The officials said the Russian military was concerned the US military would retaliate for the attacks and began jamming the GPS systems of drones operating in the area. Last year, Donald Trump ordered a Tomahawk missile strike, pictured, against the Syrian regime's al-Sharid airbase following a chemical weapons attack which killed dozens of civilians. The drones impacted so far were smaller surveillance aircraft, as opposed to the larger Predators and Reapers that often operate in combat environments and can be armed. Last year, Donald Trump ordered a Tomahawk missile strike against the Syrian regime's al-Sharid airbase following a chemical weapons attack which killed dozens of civilians. Russian forces did not shoot down the missile using its air defense system stationed in the region. At that time, the US gave Russia advance warning of that attack through a deconfliction notice. But Russian military brass have signaled that their response could be different. In March, Valery Gerasimov, the chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, said, "In the case of a threat to the lives of our servicemen, the Russian military armed forces will take response measures against both the rockets and the platforms from which they're fired." By Mail-Online reporter and Larissa Brown, defense and security editor for the Daily Mail, Russia has trashed the credibility of the council, she said. "Whenever we propose anything meaningful on Syria, Russia vetoes it. It is a travesty." Haley dismissed the Russian draft as all about protecting the Assad regime because of provisions that would have required the Security Council to endorse its findings. In other words, giving Russia a veto over any attempt to apportion blame. Russia, in turn, vetoed the US-backed motion, which would have re-established an international joint investigative mechanism, JIM, to probe chemical strikes in Syria and to identify culprits. Moscow's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia accused Haley of seeking a vote to provide cover for a Western military strike on Assad, which now seems all the more likely. "If you took the decision to carry out an illegal military adventure, and we do hope that you will come to your senses, well then you will have to bear responsibility for it," he said. Both Trump and his defense secretary Jim Mattis abruptly canceled upcoming travel plans Tuesday as the USS Donald Cook, a guided missile destroyer, moved to within striking range of Syria. French President Emmanuel Macron, who has been coordinating closely with Washington, said he would decide on a response in the coming days. "Our decision will not target allies of the regime or attack anyone but rather attack the regime's chemical capabilities," he said, insisting he did not want an escalation. As it looked to head off the threat of Western strikes, Syria said it had invited the OPCW to visit the site of the alleged attack in Douma, a settlement in the Damascus suburb of eastern Ghouta that is falling to the regime after a long and bloody siege. The OPCW said it would shortly deploy a fact-finding team to Douma for an investigation, but U.S. officials said they were working from their own information and would not necessarily hold back. Damascus also mobilized overnight Tuesday, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which said the army had put all military positions on alert, including airports and all bases, for a period of 72 hours. A source from a pro-regime unit told AFP Tuesday there were precautionary measures being taken by the Syrian army, especially the airports and military bases. Residents in the capital were also bracing for a potential response. I have lived through 7 American presidents, but Trump is the craziest, and his administration is unbalanced, said Abu Fadi, 70. I think his threats are to be feared, and we should take them seriously. In 2017, Trump launched a cruise missile strike against a Syrian airbase in retaliation for a sarin attack the UN later pinned on Assad. Syria's government has denied accusations of using banned weapons such as chlorine or sarin throughout the country's civil war. Douma has been heavily bombed by the regime and Russia, making it extremely difficult for media, including AFP, to independently verify the claims. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres said Tuesday the OPCW should be granted unfettered access to investigate. The OPCW does not have a mandate to establish who is responsible for attacks, and the joint OPCW-UN task force that once did was shut down by Russia last year after it blamed the Syria regime. Damascus agreed to hand over its chemical arsenal in 2013, narrowly avoiding American and French airstrikes in retaliation for a suspected sarin attack. That incident, which killed hundreds, also took place in eastern Ghouta. Trump has threatened to respond forcefully to the most recent allegations, saying the U.S. had a lot of options militarily and would decide in the coming days. The White House said that, in a telephone call, Trump and British Prime Minister Theresa May agreed not to allow the use of chemical weapons to continue.